I request Mr. G.D. Sharma, Principal Beeline HR Advisory, to share a few words about the conference.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, dignitaries on the dais, my fellow HR professionals, and other invitees. When we first conceived of this subject for this conference, what was running in our mind was the fact that the human resource function today is not, and I'm qualifying myself, I don't have any hesitation in saying this, the human resource function is not addressing issues of national importance at the shop floor level. National importance at the shop floor level meaning a subject like skill gap. And I think that is one area where HR professionals have been often criticized by their line managers and by other functionaries to say that HR really is not coming to grips with real life issues and so on and so forth, which are absolutely and directly business aligned and business linked and so on and so forth. So in our mind, to us as organizers of this conference, what really hit us very strongly was this yawning gap between availability, as the chairman had just now mentioned, the availability in terms of quantity of manpower in the country and the gap arising due to the lack of quality in the manpower and therefore the skill requirements and the skill levels which are currently obtaining thanks to our educational system in the country and so on and so forth, which is still at pains to link itself with industry requirements and so on. So this, according to us, was a very grave, a very kind of a real issue that was staring us in the face, and we thought that this should be the topic of discussion where we can have eminent speakers coming to us from the industry, from the government, and of course from the user point of view, which is the HR practitioners. So in a way, we have also instituted what is called as the 3P concept, the private-public partnership concept. Incidentally, the 3P concept, the private-public partnership, is the model or the design that has been adopted by the Government of India when it constituted the National Skill Development Corporation to address this issue at the national level. So just to set the context for the subject and for the day and for all our deliberations and thought processes for the day, let me take you through some of the key elements of this subject at the national level and how therefore at the individual corporate level, at the individual shop floor level, at the work level, how are we going to address some of these issues is what we are going to see during the course of the day when practitioners will come from various companies, various sectors to tell us how they are addressing the skill gap issue at the micro level. So let me first start with the macro level so that we understand the broader picture much better in order to absorb the day's proceedings. At a global level, India's 2011-2012 GDP is actually the fourth largest in the world at 4.5 trillion Indian rupees at the purchasing power parity basis. And so that really is a starting point. We are a aggressively growing economy. There could be issues at the political level and at the party level. But I think as an economy, the Indian economy is still considered very bullish. We read interviews in daily newspapers about various investment companies and asset management organizations and private equity funds and those kinds of analysts organizations which tell us that they are very, very bullish on India. And that's the reason why we are also standing here and talking about a national agenda at a local level. The second interesting facet of our economy is that India's largest sector is today the service sector, which accounts for 57.2% of the country's GDP. More than half of the country's GDP is represented by the services sector. And interestingly, The industry sector accounts for 28.6%, and of course 14.6% of the GDP is represented by agriculture. But ironically, though agriculture is the least contributor to the GDP, it happens to be still the largest employer, because 52% of all employment is from agricultural sector. And having come from an infrastructure and from a projects background, having worked in companies like L&T and BGR Energy, I can say that the second biggest employer in the country after agriculture is the construction sector, which has about, by last count, it had about 45 million people in the workforce as a construction sector, as an infrastructure sector. And the other interesting fact is that currently our labor force in India is about 500 million. And interestingly, again, 86% of this 500 million is from the unorganized sector. So what are we really talking about? We are talking about skill gap primarily in the unorganized sector, which represents 86% of the workforce in India. And most of us sitting here, I hope I can take this risk of saying that most of us represent 14% of the workforce, which is the organized sector and so on. So that's one very interesting facet of the national economy in terms of the demographics, or in terms of the composition of the workforce across sectors. The second very interesting thing is that, rather a positive aspect, is that India is on an annual basis creating about 1.5 million jobs. And that is confined to the 13 large sectors of India. India's large 13 industry sectors in 2011 created about 1.4 million jobs. And for the current year, 2012, it is estimated that we will create about 1.6 million jobs for the current year and so on. The third interesting aspect of this workforce and the skill gap is that a survey of 639 companies recently across 13 industry sectors in 8 major Indian cities showed that healthcare, hospitality, IT, ITES, non-machinery manufacturing, media, and entertainment are most optimistic about hiring activities, in the sense that they are going to be the most bullish in terms of hiring activity. Healthcare is projected to generate more than 2,73,000 jobs, followed by hospitality, about 2,30,000 jobs, and ITES, IT, 2,27,000 jobs, and so on and so forth. The other interesting facet or statistic or a factual information is that Microsoft has commissioned a study for the IT sector, and it predicts that by the year 2015, cloud computing as a domain will itself generate over 2 million jobs. So that just one domain in IT is actually more than what healthcare or what hospitality can generate. So that's the power of computing. That's the power of the IT technology that is really helping India to be present in the world map, as it were. And so therefore this study is a very path-breaking study, and it says that 2 million jobs in India alone will be created through the cloud computing domain. And very interestingly, around 14 million jobs will be created around the world only based on cloud computing. So that's the power of the IT as a potential employer of manpower in India. The other interesting statistic is that more than 50% of all these jobs that I mentioned will be generated in the small and the medium sector. So that's again good news for the SME sector, which the Government of India and CII and several other employers federations and employers organizations are very, very clear and conscious about promoting the SME sector. And so that's really good news for the SME sector, because 50% of such jobs are going to be generated in the SME sector. The other very interesting thing is that everybody knows this, that India has a demographic advantage in the sense that it has the youngest population working population in the world. The current average age of the Indian workforce is 28 years. And we are ahead of China and rest of the world. And so therefore, that's going to be the real challenge for India at an economy, at a political, at a country level, in order to provide jobs, meaningful jobs for these young minds which are restless, typically Generation Y workforce, who are going to be very restless. And so it's a sociological crisis or a sociological challenge as well, to be able to provide meaningful jobs to these young and restless minds, which is the youngest and the largest population in the world. And the other very interesting aspect about this young population in India is that the rest of the population in Europe and in several other Western countries is actually aging. And so the Indian workforce is actually going to find jobs not only in India but in rest of the world. So that's the real good news about about all this skill availability and the skill dimension. But then what really ails the country, and why are we really talking about the skill gap and bridging the skill gap today? The biggest ailment, the biggest what shall I say, the biggest deficiency is, of course, the country's educational system, which does not focus on training young people in employable skills that can provide them with employment opportunities, meaningful employment opportunities. Today, a large section of India's labor force has outdated skills. With current and expected economic growth, this challenge is only going to increase further, since more than 75% of the new job opportunities are expected to be skill-based job opportunities. So that much more is going to be the focus on skill development and skill upgradation. The government of India is therefore strongly emphasizing on upgrading people's skills by providing vocational education and training to them. It has formulated what is today come to be known as the NSDC, or the National Skill Development Corporation. It has initiated a national policy on skill development, and it has set a target for providing skills to 500 million people. That means, if you remember what I said earlier, our current workforce is 500 million. And the government of India by 2022 wants this to be doubled to another 500 million, who will be trained across India, across all sectors, across emerging sectors, and for which the National Skill Development Corporation has been formed. The other ministries like the Ministry of Human Resource Development, the Ministry of Rural Development, and the Ministry of Urban Development and Poverty Alleviation have also launched their own skill upgrading programs and self-employment schemes. In fact, it is a matter of pride for me to stand here and for all of us to be aware that the chairman of the National Skill Development Corporation is Mr. M.V. Subbiah, who is the emeritus chairman of the Murugappa Group. He is the man who sits on the board of the NSDC, and the NSDC is on a private-public partnership mode to facilitate setting up of large, high-quality, for-profit vocational institutions. It also aims to set up 1,500 new ITIs and 5,000 skill development centers across the country, as well as a national vocational qualification framework, so that for affiliations and accreditations in vocational, educational, and training systems. What is our next biggest ailment? That none of our certification programs and diplomas are certified at an international level. So there is this national vocational qualification framework which has been set up by the government of India under NSDC to sit and accredit institutions and come up with standardization across the country for qualification, certification of training programs and training content. I think that's a phenomenal area where HR professionals can play a major role in participating in these programs, in helping organizations and institutions get certified and accredited through the National Vocational Qualification Framework, as it's called, NVQF. The other thing is that academicians are also of the opinion that pre-vocational courses should commence in India, preferably in class 9 and class 10 itself, so that, like the German model, in Germany, school children go to vocational training programs for 3 years. And with the result, every German would know how to handle a toolkit. Every German like every Singaporean is trained mandatorily for 2 years in the army, similarly, every German national, every German citizen is trained for 3 years in vocational services, vocational training. And that's why today we talk about German engineering at its best. You see the Volkswagen and the BMW and the Skoda cars, they all belong to the Volkswagen family, and everybody aspires to own a Volkswagen car or a German engineering machinery, a German engineered machinery, and so on and so forth. So that's the secret of the German excellence in engineering and technology. I think that's where we all should have emulated Germany and other such countries as a national policy. This is my submission. Now, at the individual level, okay, there is one other interesting aspect because we are all, as HR and other professionals, we are always concerned with institutions like the AICTE, which is responsible for accrediting engineering and technological institutions and courses. The chairman of the All India Council for Technical Education says that 80% of the new entrants in the workforce have no opportunity for skill training. And he says that the existing training capacity is only 3.1 million per annum, as against 12.8 million joining the workforce. So what we can provide as a training infrastructure through the AICTE actually satisfies only less than 1/3 of the population that is entering the workforce. So that again is a major yawning gap in skill upgradation infrastructure that we are creating in the country. And so therefore, the UGC, the University Grants Commission, and the Standing Committee of the UGC has proposed that there will be 1,000 polytechnics which will be opened up in the next 5 years. And this is part of the plan to expand and overall the industrial training institutes, which is the ITIs, and the industrial training centers, which is again a public-private partnership of the Government of India to have industrial training centers being set up for training, qualified as well as not qualified technical manpower. For example, companies like TVS, companies like Rane, companies like the Anand Group, companies like the Larsen and Toubro have all got their own in-house training centers and training institutions so that they can churn out in their own small way hundreds of technically trained manpower to seek employment not only in their own companies post-training, but also be available to the country at large for gainful employment in technical vocations. So we need to have more of such courses. One other very interesting fact which I got about the use of internet and technology to make courses available to the general public, the reach and the speed which technology gives us through the internet is amply demonstrated by the fact that the Stanford University announced a course on artificial intelligence on the net, and it went through a mode which is called as the Massive Open Online Courses, what is called as MOOC, Massive Open Online Courses. It's like the Indira Gandhi Open University system. So they went open and on a massive scale, and it will stun you, it will surprise you, it will shock you to realize that they have got 160,000 students who have registered for the course from 190 countries. How many countries are there in this world today? Perhaps 220, 30, 40? 230 to 240 countries. 190 countries are represented in this course announced by Stanford University. And that's the power of internet and technology to make technical and non-technical courses available to the public. And many of you would have heard of Mr. Salman Khan, not the hero of Dabang, but Salman Khan from Bangladesh, who has opened up a university on the net, and he is probably supposed to be the most successful university on the net for courses anywhere from dentistry to aerospace. So Mr. Salman Khan's Walking University, or something like that it's called, is an example in today's internet world to popularize education among the masses. So that's the overall scene, ladies and gentlemen, for this program. And I have taken the pains to give you this overview because the minister who is supposed to be here, and hopefully we hear from the minister about macroeconomic issues on subjects like skill gap. I thought, let me, sensing that a minister will not be able to come during a winter session, I took upon this as a proactive step to prepare myself to give you this talk on the macroeconomic situation in terms of where we are in terms of skill gap and what companies individually should do. The country may do so many things. The NCDC may do so many things. The ITS may do so many things. The All India, the AICTE could do so many things. But they can all do their part. But what is it that we can do? And so therefore we are here sitting in this ground here in Chennai Trade Center to understand what is it that are the issues from the apprenticeship advisor's point of view. He's going to come and talk to us. We are going to listen to the director of immigration. We are seeing now today when we go to a Sharavana Bhavan, we have to tell him in Hindi whether to ask him whether you have got masala dosa or coffee or things like that, because he doesn't understand Tamil, because he is from the northeast or from Bihar or from Odisha. And so therefore today we have an immigration of labor as a major issue, immigration of labor into India between states and immigration of labor from India to other countries. So he is going to talk to us about what the real issues are at the ground level. And of course we have the Anand Group and the L&Ts and the the Ashok Leylands and all of that, all of them who are going to come and talk to us about what they are doing at their individual micro level in terms of improving the skill upgradation. Largely, it is left to us to tap the young minds, take them young, bring them into the organization, put them through a very structured training program and upgrade their skills in keeping with the skill sets that are required for your organization. And so therefore, customizing, no AICTE, no UGC can customize the training that you can provide for your employees. And so therefore, it is really us, it is the onus is on us really to develop training programs and upgradation programs for our own employees and for our own managers and so on. So let's believe in training. Let this recession and this downturn not force your finance colleagues to cut down the training expenditure and the training budget and say training budget is now kind of withdrawn until March next year and so on. Slow down or no slow down, you require training. Culture, organization culture is not a culture one for good times and one for bad times. You don't have an organization culture for recession and an organization culture for boom time. Similarly, you don't require a time or a season for training. Training is everybody's business, and it is like religion. It has to be practiced. It has to be implemented. And so training and upgradation and management development for managers is the only solution that we have in terms of making the best out of the manpower that we have. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. It's been a wonderful start for the day. Thanks to the chairman who actually set the tone for the day by his introductory speech. And the pattern that we are going to adopt here is that we'll have 4 sessions. Each session will have a session chairman, preferably, ideally a veteran, a kind of a senior HR professional that you will all recognize by face and by name. And each such session chairman will guide the proceedings for each session. And then you will have 2 or 3 speakers in each session where they will share their experiences. We'll also have time for question and answer session. So thank you very much for coming for HR Caucus 2012, and let's make it a grand success. Thank you. Have a good day.